And welcome back to New York Sports WickerMedia. I'm Juan2K99. Thank you, as always, for taking the time to watch these videos. You know, there are two dates this decade that really changed baseball history in New York. The first one was August 28, 2020. What happened that day? Well, it's not because Ahmed Rosario hit a walk-off grand slam for the Mets in Yankee Stadium against the Yankees, because the Mets were home that game in the COVID season. Now, that's not really the reason why. It was the day that it was announced that Steve Cohen was the front runner to buy the Mets, that A-Rod and J-Lo and everybody else were basically not contenders anymore. Steve Cohen was going to buy the Mets. 3 weeks later, he purchased the Mets for $2.42 billion from the lovely Wilpon family. Now, the first 3 years under Cohen had not been great for the Mets. One playoff appearance that flamed out in 2022, a woeful 2023 season. But then he found the right president of baseball operations in David Stearns, the right manager in Carlos Mendoza. And in 2024, we know what happened. The Mets make the playoffs on the last day of the season. Then they win 2 rounds, make it all the way to the NLCS, far more than what anybody could have expected. That was the first date, August 8, 2020. The second date, December 8, 2024, Sunday night, when Juan Soto signed a contract with the New York Mets, a record contract in professional sports, leaving the New York Yankees. 15 years, $765 million, $51 million per, no deferred money, an option and player opt-out after the 5th year, 2031. But the Mets can void that option if they add $4 million to each of his salaries for the final 10 years of the deal. So his annual salary would go from $51 million a year to $55 million a year. So the total value could be worth $805 million if Soto exercises that opt-out and he's retained. So those are the numbers on Juan Soto's contract with the Mets. Give him credit. He turned down $440 million 2 years ago from the Nationals, which kind of made sense considering the Nationals never really sustained success for very long. They're known for teardowns, and ownership is not exactly what I would call stable. And now he emerges with record dollars and record years. And you got to give credit to Steve Cohen. He made this happen. You know, the Mets were the only team to host Soto at the owner's home as opposed to going to the agent's office, Scott Boris's office, of course, in Southern California. And you got to think about this. A Yankee chose to be a Met. I'm not putting my Met fandom into this. I'm being as objective as I can. This doesn't happen. The last time it probably happened, when was the last time a Yankee left to go to the Mets? Probably Curtis Granderson. And I love Grandy, but there wasn't exactly a bidding war for him. And, you know, at that point in his career, he was not exactly on the level of a Juan Soto. This is not just any Yankee. This is a player who the Yankees traded for because they were going all in. And he helped lead a team that the previous year missed the playoffs in a debacle of a season. And this year they went all the way to the World Series. And the Yankees were prepared to pay $700+ million over 15 years. And yet he chooses to go to the Mets. So with Juan Soto, I want to address this to anybody who thinks he's actually overrated. I don't care if you're a Met fan, a Yankee fan, a baseball fan, whatever you may be. I've even seen videos that Yankee fans have put together of him making defensive miscues, just 3 or 4 minutes of him not playing the best right field. It's the most childish BS imaginable. It's about as reliable as CNN at this point. It's so absurd. No matter what stat you look at from a hitting perspective, Juan Soto is elite, the elite of the elite. Batting average, slugging, OPS, which is .938 in his career. That's insane. If you want to go by the more granular stats, hard hit percentage, 99th percentile in baseball last year. His chase rate, 98%. His batting eye is on the level of Barry Bonds, a lot of people will tell you. That's about as good as it gets. Bat speed, 94% in baseball. In his career, he already has 201 home runs, 5 Silver Slugger awards, won a batting title in 2020. He gets on base 42% of the time because his eye at the plate is so keen, so sharp. He's so strong, and that bat speed, as we just alluded to, is just top notch. I'll give you one more number, 160. What is 160? That is Soto's career on base percentage plus slugging plus. So OPS plus, what it does is it takes the on-base plus slugging percentage and basically averages it out across the entire league. It accounts for these factors like weather, ballpark, stuff like that. Okay, if you look at all players in baseball history through their age 25 season, minimum 3,000 plate appearances, Soto is sixth in the history of baseball. The only 5 players ahead of him, Ty Cobb, Mickey Mantle, Mike Trout, Jimmy Fox, and Rogers Hornsby. Ted Williams would be on that list if he didn't have to go serve in World War II. All of those players, Hall of Famers, or in the case of Trout, on his way to being enshrined in Cooperstown. That is the company that Juan Soto is in, and that's the level of offense that is about to come to Flushing, Queens. And he was only 26 years old and available for nothing but cash. Now, the critics will point out his defense isn't that good. At best, he's an average fielder. That's probably being kind. But he does have a strong arm, and he's an adequate base runner. So you know what? It's fine. You'll take average tools when you have top notch at hitting with power. 41 home runs last year, a career high. All right, so let's talk about the franchise perception, the Mets versus the Yankees, and how this really changes things. We know the Mets have been little brother to the Yankees for decades. No matter, even, the Mets swept the Yankees this year 4-0 in the regular season. It doesn't really matter. I mean, the Yankees still won the World Series years ago, and it really takes the Mets being that much better and winning championships to be the number 1 team in town. Obviously, that has not happened in 38 years. But when you take this level of player off of the Yankees and he chooses to go to the Mets, the flames get rekindled. These two teams will square off 6 times in 2025. First game, May 16th. And here's another thing not many people are talking about. I think radical realignment is very possible in the next 4 to 5 years in baseball. And if that does happen, I don't think you're going to have an American League and a National League anymore. I think you're going to have a division where the Mets and Yankees are in the same division and they're playing 9 to 12 times 12 times easily every year. And if that happens, the Subway Series goes from a novelty to a legit rivalry. Watch out. Now, what do these two teams do on the field and going forward? I'm going to talk about the Yankees in a moment, but as far as the Mets go first, Soto is probably going to play right field. So then in center field, you have Jose Siri and Tyrone Taylor probably platooning in center, Brandon Nimmo in left. To me, Starling Marte is your designated hitter at this point. I don't need to see him playing the outfield again. Now, remember, Luis Angel Acuna can also play center field very, very well. So if he earns that job and pushes Siri and Taylor to the bench, even better. And then in the lineup, Soto can slot somewhere in the top 4 along with Lindor, Brandon Nimmo, Mark Vientos, and I haven't even factored in Pete Alonso possibly coming back. Now, the Mets do need another corner infielder. They need a few things. If Alonso leaves, you could try moving Mark Vientos over to first base and platooning, say, Ronnie Mauricio, Brett Beatty, see who emerges with the job, but it's very, very risky. From a defensive perspective, from a batting perspective as well. Maybe you sign Alex Bregman for a couple of years, or at first base, maybe you sign Carlos Santana for 1 year. I mean, there's a couple of different things you could do, but nothing is as palatable as bringing Pete Alonso back to Queens. And with Alonso, who really knows what his market is? You know, a lot of people are talking about, well, the Yankees should just pick him up. I think the Yankees would be better off with Christian Walker at first base than Alonso. I think they need the left-handed hitter to kind of balance out the lineup between Aaron Judge and Giancarlo Stanton. I mean, do you want a 2-3-4 of Judge, Stanton, and Alonso in whatever order you want to have it? You know, you've got high power but high strikeout rates. And, I just don't like that idea. But the Mets pitching is still not quite there. So when people talk about where do the Mets rank in the division right now, I can't even think about it because this is still an incomplete roster. I still think they're going to go with the 6-man rotation. The fact that you still have Kodai Senga, you're converting Clay Holmes from reliever to starter. For those reasons, I think a 6-man rotation will make sense. But one of those has to be a frontline starter. And I don't like to use a 1, a 2, a 3 because those numbers are all very subjective. But I need a reliable towards the top of the rotation type starter. Maybe not a 1 type guy, but a guy, if I had to throw him in game 1 of a playoff series, I got confidence. Now, Walker Buehler, very, very intriguing from the Dodgers. Nathan Eovaldi, I think, would make sense on maybe a 2-year deal. As far as Max Fried and Corbin Burns, I don't see it. I don't think this is what David Stearns would want to do, giving like 5-year contracts to starting pitchers. Could Sean Manaea come back? I think so. If he will take maybe a 4-year contract, I would be in favor of it. If he would do something like at this point, 4 years, $90 million, I'd be all over it. I was thinking 3 years, $60 million, but that pitching market has become very inflated. If you look at Blake Snell's contract, for instance, Matthew Boyd's contract with the Cubs, it's going to cost quite a bit of money. Luis Severino with the A's as well, perfect example. I think it's going to take more than $20 million per year to retain Sean Manaea. But here's why this works. If you look at the luxury tax threshold, the Mets are still under the first luxury tax threshold level by about $6 million. All right, they're going to exceed it. We know that's going to happen. But here's why it works so well in the front office, and here's why I have so much confidence in the Mets going forward. We know Steve Cohen has his millions, or billions, I should say. If he wants to go out and get a big fish, if he wants to get a prize, if he wants to get his Picasso, he has a very good chance to go out there and do it. We just saw him do it with Juan Soto. But if you commit that much money to one player, now you got to think about filling in a roster with some players who don't cost so much, who aren't as prohibitive, to your overall luxury tax. And that's why David Stearns makes sense for the New York Mets. He worked in Houston for a while. Then he was GM in Milwaukee for 6 or 7 years. He didn't have a lot of payroll to work with, so he had to find players who were, didn't cost a whole lot of money, but could be productive. And he's applying those same principles here with the New York Mets. That's why you're seeing deals like Frankie Montas, like Clay Holmes coming first. Last year, guys like Jose Iglesias, Luis Torrens, all these types of guys. Okay, and it's a great dichotomy. In Milwaukee, from 2016 to 2022, Stearns committed $768 million in total payroll. He just committed $765 million to one player. Zach Scott, the ex-Mets general manager, dropped those numbers. And as far as the draft goes, the Mets will lose their second and fifth highest selections in the next draft, along with $1 million in international bonus pool money. Cool, well worth it. If the second and fifth, those two draft picks won't even be half the player that Juan Soto is. And as far as the Yankees go, I want to give them a second here also. I expect them to strike very, very quickly. Certainly they'll do something this week as the winter meetings are currently going on in Dallas, Texas. And as the Soto sweepstakes heated up, they realized losing him was possible. They've already been crafting a plan B. They've been looking at other options. They've hosted virtual calls with Corbin Burns and Max Fried. They're looking for a top pitcher, and I think they need one along with Garrett Cole. Plus, you have a free agent class. They need a first baseman. Alonso, Christian Walker could be targets. In the outfield, Teoscar Hernandez, Anthony Santander. And I think they need some bullpen help too. I mean, maybe Tanner Scott. Now that they've lost Holmes, I don't know if they're going to trust Luke Weaver to close again, but maybe Tanner Scott makes sense. Or they might trade for Cody Bellinger. But at minimum, the Yankees have a lot to do. They need a first baseman. They need another infielder, possibly a second baseman, unless Jazz Chisholm moves there. 2 outfielders, some rotation help, and at least 2 relief arms. So, it's still very early in this offseason. It's only December 9th as we're recording. But, man, the Mets struck and they struck hard, but both New York teams have a lot of work to do. All right, those are my thoughts on how the Juan Soto acquisition changes both the Mets and the Yankees. Let me know your thoughts. Put them right down there in the comments. Everybody have a great rest of your day. And, by the way, check me out Wednesday night, 6 p.m. We go live every week, talk a lot of Jets, whatever else is going on in the world of New York sports. Getting close to 1,000 subscribers. Please like, subscribe, and share with a friend, an enemy, a family member, whoever it might be. Have a great day. I'll see you right back here with more content from you know where, the Wicker Chair.